Hi everyone, Paul here from FamilyWheels.ca with another car review for your growing family. And we're on a bit of a family road trip this week. I just can't seem to get out of the wind, but we're doing it in the second generation Ford Raptor. Now, if you might remember a couple of months ago, I was actually driving this same truck around an ice course in Quebec, just ripping around to see how it would do in that off-road rallying environment. And no surprise to anyone, it was remarkable. This thing has 13 inches of travel, Fox Racing suspension, BF Goodrich KO2 tires. It's meant to deal with the most hardcore of Baja off-road desert racing courses in the world right out of the box. But it can also tow 8,000 pounds. I mentioned that in the review, and I had a number of you get in touch with me and say, okay, so how would it do as a towing vehicle? And that's what we're going to check out this week. It has the same 10-speed automatic transmission as we see in the new F-150. It also shares the same 3.5-liter EcoBoost engine, which is available in the F-150. Now granted, this is a higher output engine. It gives you more horsepower. It's been sport tuned. So how will it do under load? And how will this more floaty feeling suspension feel when you've got something dragging behind it as well? We're going to put the Raptor through a couple of different scenarios for towing this week right here on Family Wheels. Well, let me be the first to admit here that the Raptor is not a towing-focused vehicle. It's an off-roader that happens to have some modest towing capability. I mean, we compare this to, say, the Toyota Tundra with that TRD Pro package that I was driving in a couple of weeks ago. It's going to be able to tow a bit more. Look at this compared to the regular F-150 with a 3.5-liter EcoBoost on board. You can only put 1,200 pounds in the box of the Raptor, whereas it's about 3,200 pounds in the regular F-150. But it does share the same 10-speed automatic transmission, and I've got to be honest with you, I was a little worried about how this transmission would feel under load because it has so many gears to choose from. I thought it might feel a bit confused, a bit hectic, like it was searching for a different gear, just that right speed all the time. But actually, it's remarkably composed. It finds the right gear, it sticks to it, it's not frantic like I thought it might be. When we've got our smaller trailer on board, and I have to admit, this is one of the stranger truck-trailer combinations that I've ever seen in my life. We've got this old retro trailer being towed behind one of the most futuristic, badass looking trucks out there. We've also had a chance to check out this truck this week with a larger trailer supplied by Woody's RV. Now this definitely puts it up toward its maximum towing capability, and I'm starting to feel at that point that the truck is searching a little bit more with the transmission until I pop it into tow or haul mode. It's a selector button right down here on the gear shifter, and all of a sudden it does tend to stick to its gears a lot better, but your fuel economy is going to suffer a bit more. Now that is one thing I really want to talk about with this truck, because with a trailer towing behind it, I've been really impressed with the fuel economy this week. I was fully expecting to have a truck that was just going to gobble up fuel, but actually in the city, when I was being, really fairly good with this truck and not driving it too hard, I was averaging 12.9 liters per 100 kilometers in the city without a trailer. And then we threw a trailer on board. We did a 600 kilometer road trip with it. That's with our smaller trailer, by the way. We did have, wind in our favor at times, but there were times that the wind was coming crosswise as well and giving us, some poorer fuel economy numbers. But nonetheless, we averaged over that big road trip about 17.9 liters per 100 kilometers, which is phenomenally good. In fact, that's actually better than the fuel economy numbers that we see out of our Volvo station wagon when we're towing our trailer behind that car. And that goes to show you that sometimes a vehicle that's giving you more power is actually going to have better fuel economy when you put a load behind it, because it's not going to have to work as hard as a smaller output engine. Now the Raptor does come standard with Ford's towing package. That gives you a Class 4 hitch, it gives you 4 and 7-pin wiring harnesses, and it also gives you sway control functionality. That means that if you do hit a crosswind and the trailer starts to sway on you a little bit, the truck's going to try and get that under control. However, I will say this, the smaller trailer that we've driven around most this week didn't have an anti-sway bar attached to it as an aftermarket product, and the bigger trailer that we were driving around this week did. And guess which one had the most sway? It was actually the lighter trailer without the sway control bar. And that really points to the fact that the equipment is what matters, because as great as these computerized functions are, it doesn't make a difference if you don't have the right hardware towing behind you. I mean, the Raptor's 500 pounds lighter for 2017. It's not a particularly heavy truck. It weighs about 5,700 pounds. You compare this to a large F350 with a diesel engine on board, that's 2,000 pounds heavier. And if you put a 7,000 pound trailer behind this thing, it actually weighs quite a bit more than the truck does itself. So at that point, it kind of feels like, you know, the trailer is wagging the dog a little bit, if you know what I mean. And even with a lighter trailer like the one we own, say you have a utility trailer for your job site, you're going to feel it behind this thing because of this more off-road oriented suspension. One thing you'll notice about a regular pickup truck as you're driving along the road without a load, it kind of sits upright a little bit, like the back end is a little bit higher, and that's intentional so that as you put loads into it, trailers, you know, if you've got loads in the back end of this thing, it's going to squat down, but it means that it'll level out. The Raptor has been designed to sit flush at all times. So if you do put a load into it, it squats down quite a bit. And that also means that when you're driving along, your headlights, if you've got a big load on board, are going to be pointing up into the air a little bit. And this does not have auto leveling headlights for 2017. That's a feature we're seeing in more and more SUVs, but something that's been late to come to the truck world. Apparently, that could be a feature that we see in the 2018 F-150 and Raptor, but we'll have to wait and see if that actually does come to fruition. One thing I really like about towing with the Raptor, though, is that while this doesn't have towing mirrors on it, I was a little bit worried that I might lose the traffic behind me without those wider mirrors, but this truck is actually significantly wider than the regular F-150, over 6 inches, and that means that it's actually wider than a lot of trailers out there. I didn't need any tow mirrors. The visibility in this truck has been fantastic. This latest generation Raptor is also the first pickup truck ever to include paddle shifters. Great big magnesium ones. I feel like I'm shifting gears in a Lamborghini, and these are great for towing. Say you're going down a big hill, windy country roads, and you want to be able to gear down. You can do it really easily with this truck without ever taking your hands off the steering wheel, and I like that feature too. Now, speaking of the width of this vehicle, I'd highly recommend that if you're going to use the Raptor for towing, that you also look at the optional $7,900 kind of luxury package that you can add on to this truck. It's giving you a 360-degree wraparound camera, and since this is such a big vehicle, dealing with it in urban environments, dealing with it while you're trying to tow a trailer, back it up into a tricky spot, that wraparound bird's eye view camera can be really invaluable. Now, if you're towing a trailer of any real sort of substantial size at all, you're going to need a trailer braking system, and that does not come standard here on the Raptor. You have to bump into that more luxury-oriented package that I was just talking about. So it kind of looks to me like chances are people who are towing with this vehicle are probably going to bump up into that higher grade Raptor just so that they can have those systems on board. But another system that comes as part of that package as well that I think is a little bit gimmicky and kind of unnecessary is this Pro Trailer Backup Assist system. I've tested it before in the regular F-150 when it first came out a couple of years ago. The whole idea is that it's a bit tricky and counterintuitive to back up a trailer. So if you don't do it a lot, you know, this takes out the guesswork. You pop the vehicle into reverse and use this little dial down here to steer the trailer in the direction that you're thinking. It takes out that sort of counterintuitive steering that you normally have to worry about. But the thing is that it takes a lot of work to set up. It's really actually quite tricky, and it doesn't apply to all trailers. So every time you want to add a new trailer to your vehicle, so say you've got a utility trailer, a camper, and a boat, well, you're going to have to input all of those measurements and all those little finicky things into the system every time you use this kind of Pro Trailer Backup Assist system. To be honest with you, I got so frustrated with it that eventually I just said, you know what, I'm just going to back up a trailer like I always have. I know how to do it. And that's the thing. You practice it a little bit, it becomes second nature, and then you don't have to worry about it. I don't think this system is particularly necessary, and I'd be surprised if people who do a lot of towing ever use it at all. Well, I've got to say, I'm actually really pleasantly surprised this week with how well the Raptor did under load. We've driven hundreds of kilometers. I mean, that 32-foot long Grand Design Imagine trailer that we were driving around, it weighs 6,800 pounds. Woody says it's their best-selling half-ton trailer. You wouldn't want anything much bigger than that for a truck like this, but we didn't have a lot of that porpoising going on like you see in some pickup trucks with aftermarket lift kits, or maybe with a worn-out back end, the leaf springs need replacing. It also also didn't have quite as much back-end squatting as I expected it to. It feels pretty composed under load. For what it is, which is an off-roader that happens to tow pretty well, it's very impressive, but you are going to get a far better towing experience out of a more traditional F-150 or Sierra, just the more run-of-the-mill half-ton pickup truck. But I gotta be honest, the big takeaway for me here this week is that if you want the safest, most comfortable driving experience, spend the extra little bit of money and get the proper hardware for your trailer. Woody set us up with that Husky centerline weight distribution hitch for this test, and it made a world of difference. If you're going to use any truck for any kind of towing, utility trailer or RV, make sure that you get the right equipment to go along with it. But I'd like to know what your thoughts are on the Raptor as a tow vehicle. Maybe you've had a chance to tow with it yourself. Leave a comment below. Please subscribe while you're at it, and then check back with us in about a week from now because we're going to be checking out the Lincoln MKC. Until then, have a great week, and thanks for tuning in.